Hello and welcome, Vanessa Loder. You're a treasure. And it was really serendipitous that I found you. And I'd like to introduce you to our audience here at Your Second Prime. You're an energetic spark plug, a TED talker. You're a coach. You are a sought-after keynote speaker. You are an author, and many, many more things. And I'm so grateful that you drove here today to spend some time with me in the studio. So thank you so much for coming to Your Second Prime podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's just a joy to be here.
So we're going to talk about them later. Energetic breadcrumbs, kind of the theme of today, and how we ended up meeting and your generous acceptance of my invitation. So thank you. Before we jump into your mini bio and all of those things, first thing we do at Your Second Prime is talk about what we've most recently learned or are planning on learning or really interested in that our future selves will thank us for. Like, where are you on that journey? Or did you just learn something that just, gave you an aha moment?
Yeah, I love that question, and especially thinking about my future self and what she will thank me for. So much of my journey, and you'll hear it in my longer story, has to do with the masculine and the feminine energies and bringing those into balance in myself and in the world at large right now. And one thing that I learned in the last week, my dear friend Shibumi, who is a healer that I've started working with together with clients, he had this framework that I really appreciated where he said, and he's so cute when he talks about it. He'll say, permission to talk about genitals. Like, what? Where are we going with this? But then he says, men physiologically have to get hard in order to create life. They actually have to get hard, and they have to direct it outward. They have to go outside of themselves to create life. Man, I fest. A man creates life outward. Women actually soften, and they create life within themselves. And so he was describing it as man-I-festing versus moon-affesting for women, and we have our moon cycle and all of that. And for me, that really, there's something about understanding the physiology that helped me soften into my own ability to magnetize what I want to me rather than always trying to go out and hustle and grind and do it in an overly masculine way. So that's one thing that just came in the last week that's been really useful.
Wow, that is, permission to giggle about genitals. I don't know. Like, I'm in that moment where I'm teaching my son about puberty and everything gets a little uncomfortable because, you're fine until you're talking to your own kid about it. And then you're like, oh, it's less easy than I thought it would be theoretically. I appreciate that so much. And I think understanding feminine energy and masculine energy is a real gift. And so I'd like to dive into that more. For me, just recently, what I have noticed is, and I'm putting it into practice and it feels really good, and that is observing and not judging. I'm just collecting information. So to not then have an opinion about things is really freeing because all those opinions then create an emotional response that I have to do something with. Like, what am I doing with my anger or my frustration? Or unless it's just pure joy, I'm just going to observe.
I love that because it's easy to go into fix-it mode with those things, but just observation, there's a freedom in that.
A freedom or panic mode or like, oh my gosh, this is way, way out of my circle of influence, and seeing what's happening, globally or nationally and feeling completely frozen by that. The path forward for peace for me is observing. That's my future self will thank me for not getting triggered.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. So, okay, wonderful. Well, moving on, can you tell your second primers all about you? A little mini bio.
Sure. Yeah. So I have been ambitious and driven my whole life, been an overachiever, went to an Ivy League school, graduated top of my class. I thought about joining the Peace Corps after college, but I went into investment banking on Wall Street instead. Same, but different. So I was in these very male-dominated environments, and then I went on to work in private equity at JP Morgan Partners doing these billion-dollar leverage buyouts. Got my MBA from Stanford, thought about doing something entrepreneurial, but I chickened out. And at the time I thought, oh, it's just more, responsible to go back into finance because I have a little bit of student debt. But really it was a fear, not just a fear of failure, but deeper than that, a fear of not knowing what I would do with my life if I wasn't following this prescribed path for success, which was get good grades, go to a good school, get a job, get a promotion, get into a good grad school, get another good job. And so I felt like I had climbed this ladder, gotten to the top of it. I got to this point in my career where I was, sitting on the board of a company I loved in this private equity firm, investing, making plenty of money. On paper, everything looked great. And yet inside, I felt like there was some deeper purpose and meaning that was missing. And it was like I climbed to the top of that ladder and then realized, crap, wrong ladder, And that led to a bit of a breakdown / spiritual awakening. I got really into mindfulness and meditation. For me, my own awakening started when I read the book Many Lives, Many Masters by Brian Weiss, which is all about past lives and past life hypnosis, regression therapy, and all these things. And my
Can I ask?
Yeah.
Was that at odds with the upbringing you had by any chance, or was that in line with it?
That's a
what
great
allowed
question.
you to even pick up a book that was maybe more woo-woo than one would?
I mean, my parents weren't extremely religious, but they were not spiritual either. We were raised Quaker, so I didn't have like a strong Catholic upbringing I needed to work through, but I also didn't have deep resonance with spirituality. Honestly, what allowed me to read that book is that it was a Stanford classmate who recommended it to me.
Nice.
I had no idea I was reading a woo-woo book. And Brian Weiss is has a very clinical background. Like he went to Yale, so he's very prestigious. And then he had this client who came in, and it's an amazing story. I highly recommend it. So even his journey was similar to mine, where he had a classical upbringing, and then this event happened that brought him into a whole other world. So then I got really into mindfulness, meditation, the neuroscience behind behavior change. I trained in something called neurolinguistic programming, which is a way to rewire your neurology to change how you respond to things. And for several years, it was like my overachiever went nuts in the personal growth space. And my husband at the time was like, what is going on? Are you going to be a self-help junkie? Like, I don't understand what's going on with my wife. Because we met at Stanford Business School and we both worked in finance. And I came out the other side of that and realized, oh my gosh, I think what I want to do is dedicate my life to bringing these tools to other people, and particularly to women, because being in these male-dominated environments, working in finance and a little bit of tech in Silicon Valley, I felt like we need more women leaders, but we need more women leaders who are being their authentic selves, who are in touch with their own truth, rather than what I had experienced in myself was I was trying to succeed by beating all the boys in their game, and it felt actually terrible in my system.
Mm-hmm. That resonates with me, and I'm sure so many people, because I'm thinking moonlighting. Honestly, what came to my mind was Sybil Shepherd in Moonlighting, probably a long time ago. I don't know if anyone will remember this show. It was Bruce Willis got his break there. And but she was sort of like a powerful woman. She was wearing tennis shoes and in suits, and she was just so busy she couldn't wear heels, and then she put her heels on. And it was that message that you have to be like a man to succeed in a man's world. And then the women that did succeed were tokens. There was only one spot.
Yeah.
And so there wasn't going to be room for more women. And then women that were energetically female was a whole nother phenotype that, frankly, we're still dealing with, right?
Yeah.
She has to be nice, and she has to do the things that men won't do. And there is a whole ethos on that. So when you freaked your husband out, you freaked yourself out, you're like, oh, I'm being drawn to this in your book. And we'll talk about your book, because I really want everyone to pick up this book. In fact, I'm going to be giving it as gifts to everyone I know, about how you follow your soul and trust yourself.
Yes.
And I realized when I read that line, women need permission to trust themselves, or need to know they can trust themselves. How did you trust yourself when you're like, I'm walking away from several extra zeros than most women? I'm in a very prestigious, you're swimming in a very nice pool with very smart people, and I'm going to leave. I'm going to I did all the things, and now I'm just going to walk away from that, and then pivot and expect and hope that people take me seriously. How did you, like that to me, when I think about your journey, makes me like gulp. Like, seriously.
Yeah, it was a big moment. And I mean, it was a big moment, but it was also a series of very small moments.
I was going to say,
that
was
led
it
to
an
the big moment,
unfolding? Yeah, like unfolding into little successes along the way that gave you power? Tell me.
Yeah, it's a great question. And it also, I think sometimes for people, your life starts to feel so small you can't stay in it anymore the way that it was. And there's this beautiful quote of, and I don't know who it's from originally in the transformational space of, they say that pain pushes until pleasure pulls. And it was that. It was that the discomfort of living that life became so great, I couldn't do it anymore. So it's not even like it was so much courage. It was just so much discomfort and pain. And for a lot of people, that's what their soul awakening looks like. You know, my mom was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. There are things that happen often that shake us awake, where we realize, what am I doing? Am I living the life that I want to be living? So illness, divorce, loss, these are big moments of awakening for people.
Mm-hmm. And we haven't had a chance to speak about this, but I happen to be a Stoic. So I follow Stoicism, that philosophy, and that and it is in line with the observation, the observer, versus like assigning a value to something. It's either good or bad, but it just is. And then we decide our reaction. And there's this key moment that I learned in reading about Marcus Aurelius, and that is the obstacle is the way. So every time I think, this sucks. Ooh, this sucks. Oh my gosh, this actually is something I don't like. Now what? Wow. So you thought this sucks.
Yeah, now what? And I remember too, having a call with like a quote unquote reluctant psychic, getting like a reading on my soul age and my soul type while sitting in my corner office at my private equity firm, and just feeling the juxtaposition of those two worlds and being like, what am I doing? And yet it really was, the obstacle was the way. And what ended up working for me is I reached a point where I was ready to leave my job, but I didn't yet know exactly what I was going to be doing with my new work. And so I decided I'm going to give myself 6 months. And my entire premise, my mandate to myself for the 6 months is to just do what I love, to follow what I love, to follow my energetic breadcrumbs with the clear intention of finding work that I love. That is what I want to move towards. I have no idea how to do that. But my whole life, I've followed this roadmap and this prescribed path. So I thought, that phrase, if you keep doing what you've always done, you'll keep getting what you always got. So I thought, I need to take a radically different approach if I want a different outcome. If I don't want to follow other people's definition of success and I want to find my own, and this is what the whole book, The Soul Solution, my intention with it is to give a roadmap for something that fundamentally has no roadmap. So it's sort of a giant paradox. But the thing, if you want to live a very soul-aligned life, there are sort of signs you can look for, and there is a way of describing the process itself, even though it's so unique to each person. And so one way of describing that process is it's an emergent process. It's nonlinear. You get each step as you go versus, I'm going to be a lawyer. Well, I got to take the LSAT. Then I go to apply to law school. Then I get a job. Then I get an internship. Boom, boom, boom. That's very linear. It's strategic. You know all the steps. When you're trying to create a life that's truly fulfilling and joyful, there is no roadmap because there is no one else that exists on the planet that's the same as you. And so that's why identifying those moments that your soul whispers and your energetic breadcrumbs, there's a chapter on each of those in the book, is what helps you have this emergent process. And so for me, I made a commitment to myself. 6 months, I'm going to follow my heart and my intuition. I don't even know what that means. I don't really know how to do that, but that's what I'm going to do for 6 months. And if at the end of the 6 months, I haven't found work that I love, I can always go back to finance. I can always take a safe job. And so that commitment
had to give you some
Yes. And I've
Yeah.
talked to clients about this as well. I mean, it's not for everyone to quit their job with nothing planned, but the experiment of 3 months or giving yourself some sort of a window with an experimentation mentality with a blocked time frame, it helps the fear critter brain part of you or your ego calm down and just go, okay, this is temporary. She's just doing this for 6 months. And she promised me she's going to take a safe job if it doesn't work out. So I'll let her. I will not stop her. So that helps the fear settle down a little bit.
Right. The limbic system can just say, okay, I know that my needs will be taken care of, and I can let my, sort of that prefrontal cortex and that creative part of our brain just say, yes, yes. And of course, that right side of our brain, right? Question for you. When you were writing the book, what was the hardest chapter to write?
Oh, I love that question. No one's asked me that question. I got to sit with that for a minute. I think for me, the hardest part was not a single chapter, but it was like deciding on all the chapters and the content. And I would go and meditate at like 2:00 in the morning and get guidance. And sort of narrowing that down was really challenging. And then in terms of the writing, ending the book was very hard for me, actually, because there's something about finishing it that there was like pressure with the it needs to be really great. The end of the last chapter better be awesome.
Yeah,
which
it's
is
a mic drop,
right?
right?
A mic drop, which is actually funny because statistically, most people don't make it to the end of a book. So I really should have cared about the first chapter, in terms of, and then what I did is I remember getting up at like 5:00 in the morning and my office was totally dark and I lit candles and I meditated and I got really still and quiet and I was like, how do I end this book? Like, what amazing nugget of wisdom do I leave these women with? And what I heard was like that they have their own amazing nuggets of wisdom, that's the whole point of this book that you're writing is,
Right.
to tell them that. So I was like, I need to end on the best pep talk ever. And what I heard was, tell these women, you are your own pep talk. And like, that is, you learning how to get in touch with that voice inside yourself is how you find your own pep talk.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Well, thank you. You are definitely an energetic light bringer. I appreciate that. I can feel it. So tell us a little bit more about what you've been doing lately, because you'd mentioned about aligning both feminine and masculine energies, and how you see your soul awakening and what you could share with women who perhaps have stuffed their feminine energy or feel like their feminine energy is not enough. This not enoughness is imposter syndrome, and just feeling that even though you're juggling chainsaws every day, like, how come we don't see that we're enough?
Yes. I mean, first of all, if you feel that your feminine is not enough, you are not alone, and I'm right there with you. And there's very understandable reasons for that, because our culture has completely devalued the feminine. I notice myself caregiving for my children and doing these amazing things for them, but because I'm not getting paid for it and because our culture doesn't value caregiving, I discount it. And I have a hard time believing I did something so valuable that day. I had a woman on a class I was teaching online. She told me, I spent the whole day with my teenage daughter and we actually like bonded and had all these amazing conversations and it was really profound. And then later that day I said, I didn't get anything done today. And her daughter turned to her and was like, Mom, you spent the whole day with me. Like, why does that not count? I know, heart-wrenching. It hurts to hear that, because we all have that inside of us. And it's important for women to recognize you didn't create that or put that there. That was culture. So let's just name that without blaming culture either. So in terms of what I've been doing since the book, I feel like a lot of my life journey has been about balancing out, the feminine and the masculine in myself and in the world, because we're at a place right now where the world is really imbalanced. And so
I would say masculine energy is dominating.
Yes. And I call it sort of a toxic version of masculinity, because the masculine is amazing. And I now have a reverence for it that I never had before, that has come in the last couple of years. So since the book came out, what I've realized, a lot of my journey and the clients that I've supported, I like to frame it in the heroine's journey. So I don't know if you've heard of The Hero's Journey by Joseph Campbell. It's very famous.
Yes.
So this woman, Maureen Murdoch, wrote a great book called The Heroine's Journey, and she studied under Joseph Campbell. And she talked to him and said, women aren't really in the hero's journey. Like, why not? And he said, well, that's because women are what you come home to at the end of the. And she was like, that doesn't really resonate with me, Joseph. I have my own journey. So anyway.
It makes me just want to choke. And yet, how funny, he didn't know better. Like, he literally couldn't even see it when he was saying it.
And it's interesting because I used to be very insulted by that, what he said. And now I'm coming into holding my divine feminine power, which really is the place that people want to come home to, that is the place of creation inside of me. So there's a power and a truth in that. And it's also missing the vastness of who we be and all that we. So anyway, she wrote this great book, and I have taken her framework and applied it to my own life and that of many of my clients. And so what I have seen, the heroine's journey, my version of it is, first, we get lost in this masculine definition of success or of aging, right? That's like shaming yourself and you don't belong here and your wisdom isn't valid and you should be discarded.
Go. You're
so
done.
we lose ourselves in some masculine definition of not enoughness. And then we hit a wall, a breaking point. And then you go down into the darkness. This is following the cycle of the hero's journey, but for women. And you face your dragons. And that's when you look at some of your greatest fears and challenges. And then you have some massive, darkness or challenge you overcome. And you come out the other side starting to accept and own your divine feminine power and gifts and truth. And then you come in and you actually own the healthy version of your own masculine. How do I take action in the world in a way that's really authentic and aligned? And you come back up full circle to the top of the wheel with this balance of masculine and feminine within yourself. And so to make that can sound very mythological or just a framework. To bring that down into like 3D reality, the way that I did that, for example, is I actually co-founded this goddess fund with my dear soul sister, Selena. She and I both worked on Wall Street together, worked in private equity, went to Stanford Business School. Then she had a whole spiritual awakening 6 years ago, has been studying with the same teacher. And I came up with this idea of, could we reclaim investing, which is something I used to do, but could I do it from a totally different energy and have it be feminine and joyful and easeful and magnetize things to me? And so we raised this goddess fund. It's $1 million fund. It's all women investors, so women limited partners, and we invest in women-run companies and women-run funds. And we're even changing the language around investing. So, for example, when you raise a big private equity fund, typically they would say you deploy your capital, which is when you spend it, when you make investments. And I was like, why are we deploying capital? We're not going to war, So we call all of our investments devotions because it's a devotion to the feminine. So we're really trying to be intentional with changing the language around how we're investing and what we're doing. And it's been crazy pants. Investments just like dropped on our laps. Investors' money just came to us. So it was an experiment, similar to I'm going to quit my job, give myself 6 months. We were like, let's just try this as an experiment. Can we do investing from a totally different energy? Is that even possible? And we genuinely weren't sure if we could do it and have it be fun and easy and joyful.
And successful.
Yeah. And it was. We raised the fund in less than 3 months, which is like unheard of from a fundraising standpoint. And then we devoted it, meaning we fully invested it in the net. So it's already done. It's complete.
It's out there energetically, it's sort of spiraling up.
Yes. And then we've ended up, we didn't have a mandate in terms of industries, but it was like a devotion to the feminine. And so we've invested in a lot of women's health. We invested in one of the first venture capital funds that's run by a woman that's investing only exclusively in women's health care. And she's redefining women's health because it used to be only bikini health, which is like, your reproductive stuff and, your breasts. And she's redefining it as anything that shows up differently in women. So most clinical trials, all the research that's been done, it's only been done on men.
Yes.
Women, for example, our symptoms present differently when we have a heart attack.
Yeah. Stroke is one of the biggest issues. In fact, women are misdiagnosed with stroke more often than men, and women of color. It just, amplifies. I happen to work in healthcare ethics, and so this is speaking my language. I love this goddess fund. Wow, well, you're a goddess.
Yeah.
So Vanessa, I could talk to you for I think weeks I just would love it. I want to go on a private retreat. But one thing I really want to know, and you've done it beautifully because you were a high achiever and are a high achiever. What happens to women or men for that matter, but anyone that has self-imposed limits, like they haven't reached where they want to be yet, or feel like the job they're in is a job, not a career, not a calling, not a purpose. How do you overcome that? Get in touch with what you really need when daily you just need to pay your bills.
Yeah. So I think when it comes to self-imposed limits, bringing them to the surface first to look at is one of the things. So it starts with awareness. It always starts with awareness, because many of us, we're operating unconsciously and we're creating something we don't want out of an unconscious belief. So once you start to name it and bring it to the light, it already starts to shift and lose power over you. And so, it might be, what are some of my beliefs about money? So for example, I might tell my story and you might think, gosh, she just sounds amazing. She did it all and she had millions of dollars. And then there were many years where I was not making nearly as much once I left the world of finance. And my husband and I had some really difficult times where he had a lot of resentment of, you're not holding your weight. And I'm like, I'm doing this work I love, but I'm not making any money. And it was hard. It was really hard. So I just want to name it. It can sound like it's been all flowers and roses. It hasn't. And
well, I appreciate that because I think during the transition, when someone has an article written about them, the article always looks like it was just this straight shot from, like, oh, I just zip-lined over to Fabulous, You're like, were you not scared? Were you not worried? And I love that authenticity. Thank you. Because we are, I'm asking questions not only for our listeners, but for myself. Yes. I want to see, I need to know that there's a dip, but there's an uptick too.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I was giving talks for free, right? And then I would put, Google, the logo on my website. Like I work with Google and I do, but did not get paid.
Right.
So anything I could do to get in the door for many years. And I remember I felt like such a failure so many times. One of my first online webinars, I started it, I opened the line and I was waiting for people to join, nobody had joined yet. And I had to call from my home phone with my cell phone because you had to have at least one person on the line to start recording. And I had promised I would send out the recording. And I had then wanted to get fired up and do a dance party and I muted myself to do this. Then I started doing the whole teaching and I was like, no one was on the line. It was just me and myself. And I went for 20 minutes before I realized I was on mute. And there was nobody there to even tell me. And it was just this moment of oh my God, I'm such a loser, So I had a lot of those moments. And it is kind of what the heck got me through that. One of the things that I'm a huge believer in for everyone, wherever you're at, is finding a peer group of people who are wanting similar things, who are wanting some expansion or some newness from wherever you're at. And I've often found it's not our family and our friends who are best able to support us because they're unconsciously attached to us staying the same that we've always been. And when you're wanting to learn and stretch and grow, they kind of unconsciously do this thing where they pull you back and go, no, don't go, don't change. So it's very important to find a group of people who are wanting similar growth, who can hold that space for you of what you're wanting to step into. So that's one of the best things I find.
Oh, wow. That is so beautiful. Absolutely agree with you. And that unconscious pull of when you, it's not that I ever think anyone's really overtly don't do that. But it's the slightest tone of, that's cool. And you're like, that was sort of a high, that's cool. It sort of ended high. Yes. And it was a message that, I don't know that I really get what you're doing or I'm not aligned with it and whatnot. So to find the generous person that says, I'll take you with me. I'll show you what I know. And in fact, you're doing that for me. So listeners, I found Vanessa on my meditation app and called the Insight Timer. And you had taught a course. And randomly, and I've never done such a thing, ever, sent you an email, a direct message that you answered
9 months later.
9 months later, which then I couldn't find. I saw it, and then I'm like, I can't find it. I don't know how this app works. Where is her message? I think Vanessa responded. And so a year ago, I reached out to you. And then, funny enough, you were down here visiting family, and it worked out. And dear listeners, I've written a book, and it is done. And I tried to end the chapter nicely at the very end. And what's so crazy is I was telling Vanessa, and we were on the phone, and she said, "Oh, you should use this one literary agency." And I thought, "Oh my God, it's not going to be the one. I think I've chosen the wrong one." And it was the exact same one I had already chosen. And so you are an embodiment of those energetic breadcrumbs. Like, it was totally meant to be. And in your book, or actually it was in the course I just finished, be patient.
Yeah.
Can we talk about,
oh my gosh,
you've made the decision, like I wrote the book, and then what? Now what? As you said, the path is unwritten, and there is no one telling me what to do.
Yes.
And then be patient.
It's so hard. It's probably one of the hardest things, because you have this desire that's born, and we have this longing, and then we want the thing
you
as soon as we have
acknowledged
the
it.
desire.
And you acknowledged it, and you say, "Oh, desire, I see you, and I accept you, and now I'm ready to go." And then what?
Yeah. Yes. And I think you could even bring it back to the feminine and the masculine, because there's just a sort of a waiting and a beingness in the feminine that's very, I think we've been trained out of. And so one of the biggest, I don't really like to believe in mistakes, but when I look back on my trajectory, a thing where I caused myself a lot of pain unnecessarily was I would constantly was like, it's not enough. I'm not making enough money. My business isn't big enough. I don't have enough people. Da, 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 da. I have felt that way the whole time for 10 years, to be clear. Like, I've never really gotten out of that. Only in the last year or two do I feel like I've started to settle a little bit into like, oh, I have done some nice things. But it's taken 10 years. But if I could go back, my future self today to me back then, and for wherever you're at, if we can just find a way to appreciate where we're at, and it's so hard to do that. And I think personally, I slowed myself down the most by always focusing on what was not good enough about my business. And if I could have just appreciated a couple things. So one of the things I do now every morning in the last 2 years that I think has really helped me is I will think of any goal you have. You want the thing because you think it's going to make you feel a certain way. And often then we get the external thing, and maybe we get the feeling, but it doesn't even last as long as we liked, and then we go back down. You can cultivate the feelings immediately. And so what I'll do is I'll think about what's a goal or something I really want right now. Okay, well, what's the feeling that I'm hoping that will give me? And then I'll set a timer, and I'll try to cultivate that feeling physiologically in my body for just 2 minutes.
Isn't that also the path to manifestation?
Yes.
Is just pulling in
So
that,
much.
like, ultimately, when I feel this way energetically, the universe provides for it, and it's just to know that and see. I think that repetitiveness to see, oh, it does happen.
Yeah.
It really does. Like, I didn't hear from you. I didn't get sad about it or anything, but I was like, I kind of spaced it out.
And you kind of let it go.
I let it
And then
go.
it
And
came.
here a year later, and it was absolutely the right time. No other time would you happen to be in the area with childcare and the studio's available. And
It was all like, whoom,
exactly.
it just came in.
And I just think, okay, can we show gratitude every day, looking for the good? Oh, every day looking for that gratitude. You are such a source for wisdom. I wish we could spend more time together. So, with your book coming out, what do you see in your future, and how will you embody what you plan on doing with your launch and really getting the word out there? Because I think this is one of the most beautifully written books, and so well done. And I was inspired, and I felt you wrote for me. Mm-hmm. And I know that a lot of people will feel that way. Mm-hmm. Like I'm like, oh, yeah, she actually watched me struggle all day long and then wrote that passage. And so thank you for your beautiful work. But what do you plan on doing with it?
Great question. Well, the book I'm just going to continue to share with the world. And then the Goddess Fund that we did was so much fun, and it was so easy, and it was such a success in the outside world. And P.S., the last 10 years, things did not happen that easily or that fun, that we thought, well, what do we want to do? We want to raise a larger fund? Do we want to start a business together? And we're actually working on a new business idea that is not even as much about the product or service, but it's about how do we work in a new way? Because the way that we work is fundamentally broken. And so how can we build a large scalable company while teaching people to work in a way where they bring their whole self to work? We're having conversations around what if the point of work was to help people feel really seen and really known and as if they belong, and to help them identify their gifts and share them with the world? What if that was actually the purpose of work? And so we're kind of in this space where we're tuning into the energy that we want to create from, and we're being patient about the what is the thing that we're building and experimenting. So hopefully, building this new business in the next couple of years, and honestly just showing up. I consider myself a Stanford MBA shaman. I like to joke, like a healer. And so one of my intentions and prayers every morning is, how can I be useful? How can I be of service today? And it's fun because then people cross my path and I get to share something or do, and it's just, I'm following the flow in a way that I tried to for the last 10 years. And even I describe in the book how to do that. But I actually think I'm only just now starting to do that truly. So it's really cool when you don't even know where the universe is. And I love the whole concept of your second prime, because it's like, I'm just getting started.
Yeah.
And you're just getting started. And all these women, as we're coming into our 40s, our 50s, our 60s, there is like a truthness that lands in our system of, this is me, and I'm not going to apologize anymore. And I know myself in ways that I didn't before. And I'm just beginning.
Yes. And we have so much to give.
Yes.
And if we stick with the narrative, which is to sideline yourself, then the world will miss out. The world needs us to live our purpose. So in my book, I talk about an inconvenient dream. And my inconvenient dream is to disrupt aging. It's to say, wait a second, aging is amazing. Let's rebrand it and let people know that you're smarter, more in touch with your spiritual self, more emotionally available, more seasoned on every level. You have a wisdom. All of these gifts, you're more capable. And then when you realize what your purpose is to give it away. Mm-hmm. That is what we're here to do. We're here to love each other and give our purpose away. And that could look like building a business. Like I have this in my mind, I'm thinking, having a second prime marketplace where people simply do what fills their bucket, and it supports goodness in the world, because your purpose, I believe everyone's purpose is to sort of support community, because we're not in isolation.
Yeah.
So your purpose generally helps people. Yeah. Your purpose isn't for you, it's to give it away. Exactly. You're sharing it. So if everyone was in their purpose and, working in that way, the world would be sort of circularly fulfilled, right? You would have products that met the needs of people that were meeting energetic needs, and it would continue that way. So I'm fully aligned. And if you have any, look me up. I want to chat about it. And so how do people find you?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, you can find me on my website, vanessaloder.com, LODER.com. And if you buy the book, there's also a link in the book that has a ton of free audios, future self-guided visualizations, and, mini courses and things like that are bonuses with the book, because I really wanted to give people tools so they could apply it in their daily life. So that link is in the book. And I think my website's the best way to find me. I'm on LinkedIn and I'm not too much on social media. So,
yeah. Well, you're an absolute inspiration. Thank you for 9 months later answering my email. And I had taken your course and I loved it. And I just took another one. And I would really highly recommend any of your courses on Insight Timer also, which I think is a wonderful platform. And if anyone wants to get in touch with Vanessa, that's another way to hear her spark plug of inspiration and absolute wisdom. And I love how you distill everything down into small, understandable messages that really connect. Like you're an excellent, excellent communicator.
Oh,
so
thank you. Well, I receive that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for being on your second prime. And I can't wait to spend more time with you in the future. And thank you, everyone, for joining me today. And This is our second video for YouTube. Woohoo! And who knows how it's going to go, but we'll put it out there. And my deepest gratitude to you, Vanessa. Mwah.
Thank you for having me. Can't wait to read your book.
Oh, I thank you. Okay. Take care. Thank you so much for joining us on the journey of enlightened aging and creating the second prime of your dreams. Be sure to lead with purpose and intention and show the world that your second prime is kick-ass.